But what's going to kill people is going to be water.
Hello, I'm Steve Jerve, and welcome to Surviving the Storm, a Storm Teammate special. Welcome to beautiful Egmont Key State Park, a National Wildlife Park refuge. Egmont Key is a stunning location. It's filled with history and amazing stories, and it's a window into the power of a hurricane. Egmont Key is a breathtakingly beautiful spot when viewed from any angle. It's a protected island, part Florida State Park and part National Wildlife Sanctuary. Egmont Key is located about 5 miles west of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge and rests between the barrier islands of the Pinellas Beaches and Manatee County. But Egmont is not considered a barrier island itself. Geologists determine it is a delta island created by millions of years of sediment deposited by the currents of Tampa Bay. Part of Egmont Key's charm is that it's only accessible by boat.
Welcome to Spring Break 2016. You guys picked a great time to come to Florida.
When the weather's nice, hundreds of tourists can invade Egmont Key each day, venturing out aboard a ferry like this one from Fort DeSoto and operated by Hubbard's Marina, which has been bringing day trippers here since 2007. Pleasure boats are also welcome. I was able to hitch a ride on Eagle 8. Pilot Chase Ritter was able to set the chopper down on the remains of a helipad. In an emergency, the Coast Guard and medical helicopters also land here. Egmont is home to one of the largest populations of gopher tortoises and as many as 40,000 nesting seabirds. For the past 100 years, harbor pilots have been bunking on the island before meeting up their ships coming and going from the port. Welcome. Thank you very much. But Park Ranger Tom Watson is the only permanent human inhabitant. Egmont Key has been his address for more than 20 years, and he knows just about everything there is to know about his paradise home. Many people don't realize, first of all, Egmont Key is here. Secondly, the vast amount of history here.
Yes, it goes back. I mean, what we have records of and know about was when it was an internment camp for the Seminole Indians at one time before they were shipped to Oklahoma, or the Marcheteers. And then there was Civil War activity here where there were Southern troops stationed here until the Union troops came down and they were just too much for them. So they abandoned the island, but they took the prism for the light tower with them when that's how important that light has been over history. And they buried it in Tampa somewhere, and it was hidden for the entire Civil War, and then it came back.
Spanish explorers Panfilo de Narvaez and Hernando de Soto first spotted this little island in the early 1500s. When the English acquired the key in the mid-1700s, they named it for John Percival, the second Earl of Egmont. Egmont Key finally ended up in the hands of the U.S. in 1827, and 20 years later, a navigational lighthouse was built, which today is operated by the Coast Guard. Old brick roads that seemed to lead to nowhere were built to connect stores, houses, and Gulfside gun batteries for Fort Dade, the defense post during the Spanish-American War.
Then you had the Spanish-American warfare, where this island was really fortified in 1898 because of the fear of the tremendous Spanish Armada, and they were going to, the eastern coastal defenses was built up.
A small cemetery near the lighthouse is the final resting place for keepers and their families, as well as victims of yellow fever who had come to Egmont to escape the disease in the late 1800s. One of 2 watchtowers set up during World War II to scan the Gulf for German U-boats is sinking under the Gulf. And that is why, despite being cherished for its history and beauty, Egmont is becoming known now for its vulnerability to erosion. Since scientists began tracking in 1877, Egmont Key has fallen to the elements, shrinking to almost half its original size. Hurricanes and storms such as the Great Gale of 1848 have taken their toll as the elements continue to chip away at Egmont Key. And naturally, not just from hurricanes, but just from the natural flow of water, this island is changing all the time.
Yeah, there's unfortunately an erosion situation here, which we deal with. We've seen it shift around a little bit. We've seen some of it go away, but we're dealing with it, and we just hope that we have great friends with the Army Corps of Engineers who have helped maintain this island when they can, when they do channel maintenance, and there's sand around. Sand is extremely important, everybody wants it. And you know about the Pinellas beaches, they want sand too, so it's a tough thing.
Coming up, Egmont Key and the lighthouse here have a secret that can help you survive a hurricane. It's the story of a great storm so powerful it nearly swept the island away.
Supposedly there was a 15-foot tidal surge that crossed the island. There's a story of the survival of the lighthouse keeper.
And later, dogs to the rescue. We'll show you how these special canines learn how to find victims trapped in the wake of a storm.
Good job. Good job.
If this lighthouse could talk, what stories it could tell. It's been guiding ships in from the Gulf of Mexico since 1858. It replaces a previous lighthouse that was destroyed 10 years earlier in what became known as the Great Gale of 1848. 160 years ago, Egmont Key was an unspoiled wilderness, probably much like it was when Spanish explorers first spotted it in the early 1500s. But as civilization took hold, mariners needed a beacon to light the way along the coast and into Tampa Bay. So the U.S. government erected the first lighthouse here in 1847. The light shone only a few months before catastrophe came calling. They called it the Great Gale of 1848. Today we know it was a hurricane, and a powerful one, wielding winds of up to 135 miles per hour. It began on the morning of September 23rd and didn't let up completely until 2 days later. As the winds picked up, the barometer bottomed out at 28.18 inches. Survivors say the storm churned the bay to the point that it glowed with phosphorescence, almost bright enough to read by. But it was the tremendous rush of storm surge that caught 1,000-odd Tampa residents off guard. Some witnesses say the water rose 5 feet in 15 minutes. The wind and water flattened almost every building at Fort Brooke in Tampa. Amazingly, no one died in the storm. Out on Egmont Key, the surge quickly covered the island.
We're out here to talk about hurricane history in many ways. This is a good point of reference because this island essentially was underwater during the Great Gale of 1848, in which that lighthouse had a predecessor that was almost completely destroyed.
Yes, 1848 was built. 4 months later, the hurricane that you speak of came through. Supposedly there was a 15-foot tidal surge that crossed the island. There's a story of the survival of the lighthouse keeper, which we don't know whether a lot of it is the case or not.
Egmont Key Park Ranger Tom Watson is referring to the legendary story of lighthouse keeper Sherrod Edwards, who some historians say saved himself and his family by placing them in a boat and tying it to a tree or palmettos to survive the storm. The tale goes on to relate how the next day, Edwards rowed the boat into town and tendered his resignation. Watson is skeptical, but it does make for a good story.
Anyway, Congress decided after that to appropriate enough money to build this particular tower. 10 years later, it took 10 years for that to all happen, and their story was make it last. Well, that's happened. That's about 160 years old, and it's in absolutely amazingly good shape, you know, and it's operating today as an aids to navigation. It's under the contract of the U.S. Coast Guard. It's their lighthouse to maintain, and it's a very important signal to bring people in and out of the bay, the shipping channel.
Nowadays, we have science to help us predict the path and intensity of a storm and the potential for storm surge. The difficult part for forecasters is making residents who have never experienced a direct hit from a storm aware of just how devastating a major storm can be.
We've got to go back over 100 years in Tampa to find a storm that's big enough to produce the catastrophic surge that I know can occur. It makes it very hard to tell people or help people understand how vulnerable Tampa is. There's just no hurricane awareness with respect to a worst case scenario.
The 2016 Atlantic hurricane season forecast is expected to be near the historical average. Colorado State University doctors Phil Klotzbach and William Gray predict There'll be 12 named storms this season. 6 of them are expected to become hurricanes, and 4 of these hurricanes are expected to develop into major storms. CSU forecasters also predict there is a 50% chance that at least one major storm will make landfall in the U.S., a 30% probability it will make landfall along the East Coast, including Florida, and a 29% chance that a major storm will land along the Gulf Coast. Meteorologists charged with making hurricane forecasts hear it every year. How busy of a hurricane season will we have? How many hurricanes? How severe will they be? Will they come to my house? Scientists are getting better at predicting the direction and strength of a storm in the short term. But even top National Hurricane Center experts like Chris Landsey admit long-term forecasting is still an uncertain science.
Well, this hurricane season has a huge amount of uncertainty because we are coming out of this real strong El Nino, and that caused 2015 to be very quiet. We had no U.S. landfalling hurricanes.
There it is again, the reference to El Nino. Every season we hear about what effects this recurring Pacific Ocean warm-up and its cool counterpart La Nina may have on the Atlantic hurricane activity. This year, the El Nino weather pattern will be less helpful in long-range storm forecasting.
And sometimes these El Ninos last 2 years, and it turns out 2 years in a row are quiet. But sometimes it flips and goes to the counterpart, La Nina, and you have a very busy year. And 1998 is an example of that. So at this point, El Nino's fading, but the key is what happens at the peak of the season, August, September, and October. And at this point, anything could happen. We could have El Nino and it shuts down the season. We could have La Nina and we have a very busy 2016. So I wish I could give you a better answer, but we really don't know the seasonal outlook at this point.
Colorado State University is usually first each year to issue an Atlantic hurricane forecast. NOAA's forecast follows, but scientists tend to upgrade their predictions at the start of the season nears and after they determine the effects of El Nino. But whether active or not, any hurricane activity is dangerous if it affects where you live.
The thing is that it's got limited applicability to Tampa, okay? Because even if we say it's going to be a quiet year, and we don't know yet, if there's only one hurricane and that hits Tampa Bay, it's a disaster for you all. So you've got to be ready regardless of the seasonal forecast. And I know that's a big challenge because it's been so long since Tampa Bay's had a direct hit. You've got to go back 90 years since the last major hurricane. And that means you've never had a major hurricane. Your parents have never had a major hurricane. Maybe even your grandparents haven't had one. And so the thought that a strong hurricane could hit is probably outlandish to a lot of folks. But it will happen, and it could happen in 2016.
It's not the wind, but a hurricane storm surge that takes the greatest toll on life and property. Coming up, we'll show you why experts say when it comes to storm surge, the Tampa Bay area is the most vulnerable place to live.
They pretty much said in no uncertain terms, drop the geek speak and tell me how deep the water is going to be.
And we'll tell you how you can find out if your house is in danger of being flooded out when a storm hits. Hurricane Survival Kit. Water, 1 gallon per person. Prescription medicine. Canned food, batteries. Pet provisions. Enough to last a week. Storm surge. The water can rise in an instant and is often considered to be the most dangerous and definitely deadliest part of a storm. Now national hurricane experts are unveiling a new system in order to more accurately predict storm surge. This hurricane season, NOAA and the National Hurricane Center want to get the word out about an easy way you can determine if you are in danger of getting flooded out in a storm surge situation. Hurricane Center scientists listened to what the public had to say about how storm surge information is communicated.
They pretty much said in no uncertain terms, drop the geek speak and tell me how deep the water is going to be. That's what this graphic does.
After a 2-year trial period, the potential storm surge flooding graphic has been perfected. These interactive storm surge warning maps show how high the water may rise during a storm.
It's a product that predicted how deep the water could be in a hurricane landfall. And by deep, how far up your leg or how far over your head in a severe case.
Simple storm surge graphics showing which areas would be flooded.
Simple is a good word. We spent a lot of time and a lot of energy trying to achieve simple.
The maps are easy to access online and very easy to use. First, zero in on your neighborhood. Click on a storm category between 1 and 5 and see how the storm surge changes. Blue represents less than a 3-foot storm surge. Next is yellow, 3 feet and above. Orange means a surge of 6 feet or higher is possible. And red, well, that means that storm surge can possibly rise above 9 feet. So you can clearly see it doesn't take a major storm to put most of Pinellas County and other coastal communities in the Bay Area under several feet of water.
But when people see that graphic this year, we want them to be thinking that it is like a warning and that they should take the appropriate action, listen to the local officials. If you're told to evacuate, please do so.
Good advice that should be part of your family plan, and that will help you in surviving the storm. The United States Coast Guard has been saving lives, protecting our shores since the 1700s. But during a hurricane, that mission takes on a whole new dimension. See how these elite rescuers plan for surviving the storm. Since 2005, when Florida was last hit by a deadly hurricane, nearly 3 million new residents now call the state home. Almost all of them, including some who already live here, have never experienced the full force of a hurricane. That's nearly 40% of the Florida population. As Ian Oliver tells us what's worse, many of those have no idea how to prepare.
The last major hurricane to hit Florida was Wilma back in October of 2005. It formed off the coast of Jamaica and rapidly intensified into a Category 5 hurricane as it headed west towards the Yucatan Peninsula before turning back to cross Florida and head up the east coast. Wilma killed 87 people and caused nearly $30 billion in damage. Since that time, close to 3 million new residents call our state home. Almost all of them, and many more already here, have never experienced the full force of a hurricane. This creates a huge challenge for emergency managers who may need to motivate people to evacuate. National Hurricane Center Warning Coordinator Daniel Brown has advice for newcomers.
The first thing I would beg that person to do that moved here from out of state is, even before the season starts, is to go find out if they live in a storm surge evacuation zone. Because if they do, start making those plans then to figure out what you're going to do when that warning is issued.
That's because the biggest threat to residents of Tampa Bay is storm surge.
So what's unique about the Tampa Bay area is that big bay. It's like a catcher's mitt or a funnel. So imagine the bay opens up to the ocean, you're pouring water into the bay, and then the bay converges in the backside. Well, that makes the water level rise worse.
This means the storm surge can travel far inland.
So it can push salt water up a river. So in cases, Hillsborough River, if it connects to the ocean, it will push salt water up the river.
That is exactly what happened in New York when Hurricane Sandy's storm surge washed in and pushed floodwaters 30 miles up the Hudson River. What would happen if a hurricane like Sandy hit here?
Oh, it would be catastrophic.
Rome says Tampa Bay tops his list of most vulnerable locations for a hurricane disaster for 2 reasons: its physical features and the fact that we haven't had a direct hit from a major storm since 1848.
But when you have to go that far back in time to find a real-world example of how high the water could go, nobody living in Tampa now was around back then. And a lot of people who are moving to Florida now have never experienced a hurricane.
Ian Oliver, Storm Team 8.
When it comes to rescue operations at sea and in dangerous conditions, there is no one better than the United States Coast Guard. After all, coasties have been saving lives since the 1700s. Anthony Allred shows us how these elite rescuers plan for surviving the storm.
He's at the boat. They're bringing the member back on board.
With a motto like Semper Paratus, the United States Coast Guard is always willing to jump in, rescue people, and save lives. So as we head into this hurricane season, they want you to know Semper Paratus is more than a motto. It's a way of life.
By 1100, hopefully, we have approval from district.
This room is our briefing room. We were just holding a planning meeting. This is in preparation for the hurricane season.
And as part of their hurricane preps, the St. Pete Coast Guard has meetings to troubleshoot worst-case scenarios.
People could be thrown off, the boat could capsize, we could end up pulling somebody out of the water. We maintain readiness in case of those situations.
It's important for us to prepare and exercise because it's like any sporting event where you need to practice before you actually get into the game.
Starboard feels good. Roger, coming down. Roger, switch support.
I tagged along on this 45-foot response boat as guardsmen got hands-on experience from everything, from fixing boat failure.
Hey, we hit something coming down.
Be advised, we have struck a submerged object in position.
To search and rescue.
Hands off board, check ABCs.
One of the main jobs of the Coast Guard is to do search and rescue. So we maintain daily search and rescue operation preparedness. That includes doing drills like man overboard, as if someone had fallen off their boat or someone had fallen off our boat. So we know exactly what to do, and it's standard throughout the Coast Guard.
But when it comes to being safe, this hurricane season, the Coast Guard wants you to know.
There's always risk going out on your boat, no matter what. But during a hurricane, the winds are high, the seas are high, and anything could happen.
The public should also know that we do keep our personnel safe when the weather conditions exceed the operating limits for our boats. We typically do not go out, and we will not have response when the eye of the storm is passing if the weather conditions are too severe.
From Yankeetown all the way down to Fort Myers Beach, Station St. Petersburg covers more than 500 nautical miles. So if there's one more thing they want you to know this hurricane season, it's Semper Paratus, which means they are always ready. Anthony Allred, News Channel 8.
FEMA Director Craig Fugate got right to the point at this year's National Hurricane Conference.
But what's going to kill people is going to be water. That's what the data tells us. And if we don't get people to evacuate in time, we cannot change the outcome for them.
That's why this hurricane season, NOAA and the National Hurricane Center are in the final stages of developing a new storm surge warning alert system. It will go live next hurricane season.
So this will be a storm surge warning, and again, it's a warning for the storm surge hazard. We've always issued hurricane warnings for hurricanes, which really covers the wind. The primary hazard that causes the greatest loss of life is storm surge.
The National Hurricane Center and the local National Weather Service offices will coordinate how and when the warnings will be issued.
We're working with other federal agencies to ensure that this warning will be alerted through the wireless alert network. So if folks have phones, as you now get with tornado warnings and other warnings, you get the alert on your phone.
Until then, the storm surge alerts and warnings go out on local TV, radio, or through social media.
We want folks to run from the water and hide from the wind. So you don't have to go very far when you evacuate. Just go far enough to get out of those storm surge risk areas or the evacuation zones. Find a friend or family that live outside those areas before the season so you have a place to go if your area is threatened.
And you don't have to live along the water to get the storm surge alert. A warning could be issued far away from the coast.
Storm surge can occur in different locations than the strongest winds. So there could be times when maybe you're only under a tropical storm warning. And I say only because tropical storms still can cause a large loss of life, can still cause flooding, can still cause storm surge. So there could be a situation where you have a tropical storm warning, but we're still concerned about that storm surge threat and would issue the storm surge warning.
Storm surge watches will be issued about 48 hours prior to the arrival of tropical storm force winds, or when the storm surge is expected. A storm surge warning would come about 36 hours in advance.
Because when the warning is issued, you really need to be ready to take the action. And when the warning is issued, again, that's the time to move to an inland location, away from that storm surge risk area. And just, it's peace of mind if you know before the season, before the storm, on exactly what you need to do to make sure you and your family are safe.
Coming up next, an important force in forecasting tropical weather is losing its Tampa home. We'll show you what's happening to NOAA's Hurricane Hunter planes. Make sure you check out our Surviving the Storm page on WFLA.com. There you'll find special web-exclusive stories, hurricane guide, and special bonus features we put together just for the web, including a behind-the-scenes look at our show and production on Egmont Key. You can get to it through our homepage.
But what's going to kill people is going to be water.
For many Floridians, the good life is all about having fun in and on the water. But how do you protect your boat when a hurricane approaches? Meteorologist Julie Phillips shows us how.
The key for boat owners getting through a hurricane is preparation, long before the storm hits. Owners will want to make sure their insurance is updated and their registration is current with the state. Brittany Poley with the U.S. Coast Guard explains you also need a plan for how and where you'll secure your boat.
The best plan is usually to remove your boat from the water and secure it, strap it down to a trailer and move it to a safe location if possible.
To learn how to properly secure your boat, you can contact your local marina, insurance company, or go to the Coast Guard's website.
And for small boats under 25 feet like this one, this is critical because riding out a bad storm can be downright dangerous.
You may not be able to operate your vessel in those sea conditions or those wind conditions, and you can get pushed into other vessels, pushed onto land and run aground. You could be damaged by the waves and sink.
Experienced boaters like Dylan Hubbard of Hubbard's Marina knows the biggest threat for him in a hurricane is storm surge.
If it's making landfall north of us within 100, 150 miles, then we take our boats offshore and make sure they're not at the dock. And we'll ride the storm out offshore.
Managing larger boats is more complicated, though. The Hubbards put them in a safe harbor and add more storm lines before the storm hits.
And so, for example, instead of 2 bow lines, we would add 4 or 5 bow lines, making sure they all get tension at the same time. And as long as the boat is tied up correctly, it can weather a pretty good storm.
So, how do you know how much line to give the boat to accommodate the rising storm surge? Well, you don't.
Part of watching these boats and protecting our assets is literally camping on the vessel while the storm blows through. If the tide's coming up, we adjust lines. If tide's going down, we adjust lines.
Deeply rooted in a nautical way of life, the Hubbard family is all too familiar with being prepared for hurricane season.
So there's a lot of storm memories in my family, and my father has plenty from Hurricane Andrew and back then, and my grandfather had plenty from his time as well.
I'm Storm Team 8 meteorologist Julie Phillips.
The news was upsetting at first. After 23 years, the NOAA Hurricane Hunter planes must move out of their home inside Hangar 5 at MacDill Air Force Base. These planes, which include 2 P-3 Orions named Miss Piggy and Kermit, fly into the center of storms and collect vital information used to forecast the storm track and storm strength. A Gulfstream jet the crew calls Gonzo goes high above a storm or hurricane to collect other types of information. MacDill needs the hangar space for 6 new refueling tankers and 400 new employees. Fortunately, the Hurricane Hunters have some congressional champions working to ensure the team stays in Florida, and specifically in the Tampa Bay area.
To uproot this operation, to take it to a different part of the country, would be highly disruptive of an exceptionally important mission.
Senator Bill Nelson insists NOAA is not being evicted from MacDill Air Force Base, simply looking at better options, which include sites in Tampa, Clearwater, St. Pete, and Lakeland.
So the question is, on the relocation of NOAA, where should they go? That is now being studied and will be determined by NOAA in consultation with the Air Force.
NOAA and the Hurricane Hunter planes have until next summer to find a new home. Dogs are not only man's best friends, they're our search and rescue heroes. When we come back, we show you how these amazing canines train for their role in saving lives. After a hurricane disaster, first responders rely on their canine partners for their special natural abilities. Tampa Fire Rescue Dogs helped look for survivors after 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, and even the earthquake in Haiti. Meteorologist Lee Spann got a chance to spend time with these canine heroes in a special training session.
So this is Pilot, one of the 6 Tampa Fire Rescue search dogs, and the training takes years before a dog like Pilot will go into a disaster area.
And our job is to find people that are trapped in the debris, the collapsed buildings, that are alive.
Lieutenant Roger Picard has been a search dog handler with Tampa Fire Rescue since 1998. Despite the serious situations these dogs go to, they've been trained to enjoy the search.
This is just a game of hide and go seek to them. That's all it is.
The dogs pick up on the scent of skin cells.
You see them put them up in the air, and they're going, oh, he's over there. And they run up there. You can see the tail get excited.
During the roughly 2-year training program, handlers take the dogs everywhere with them to get them used to many situations and surroundings.
We put them inside airports, go up and down elevators and escalators. We put them on unpleasant surfaces, which are some of the skills that you'll see out here.
Zuma is Lieutenant Brian Smithy's newest puppy.
For the next couple of months, she'll actually be finding people in simple kind of settings, but she's got about 2 years ahead of her before she gets of age and we really get her ready to take a certification test.
Smithy deployed to Charlie and Katrina hurricane zones and knows how important that certification is.
We went through those couple of years of having all the storms and all the hurricanes, so you learned, the differences in the wind storms and the tidal surge with like Katrina and that being different, and just how it affects a lot of the structures in different ways.
No matter the structure, these dogs are focused on finding their prize. And on this day, I became that prize.
I'm going to go hide around the corner, so I don't want them to cheat and know where you're at.
So I'm in here, waiting on Pilot.
Search!
After Pilot stretches his legs around the field, he zeroes in on the pipes. Pretty soon, he pushes hard on the door to my pipe and takes the actual prize, his toy. Then, he came back to play. Good job, good job. And the car does keep it fun for the dogs, but knows the gravity of the work they do.
But when I got off the bus at the World Trade Center and I saw how quiet people got, you could see their spirits actually being lifted, saying the search dogs are here. It's going to be a good day. We're going to find somebody.
Lee Spann, Storm Team 8.
Hey, I'm here with Karen McAllister, and she is with AT&T. And as we head into hurricane season, they've got some great things that you probably want to know about before the season starts that can help you get ready and be even more prepared this year in case we do see any hurricanes in the Tampa Bay area. So Karen, I know you have a product that you're very excited about that could really be a huge help when we have severe weather and also at other points during when life happens as well.
Right, this can be a real lifesaver. So during severe weather or any time of crisis, the last thing you want is to have a dead or a dying phone. So this is the world's only emergency mobile phone that's powered by AA batteries.
So I imagine, during a hurricane, when you have multiple days without power, this is going to come in handy. Now, 2 AA batteries, how long are they going to last?
The batteries can last 15 years. And during an emergency, when you're using the phone, it will last for 10 hours of talk time.
And then also there's a couple of other features besides just using it to make phone calls. What else can you use it with?
It has all the basics that you'll need during an emergency. It has a flashlight, and if you hold the flashlight down for 7 seconds, it'll create an SOS signal. And then this is the panic button. Okay. When you push this will alert 911, and then it'll also send messages to up to 5 contacts. Okay. So it'll send either text or email messages with your location and your information.
Connecting with friends and family through social media is a lot of fun, but now it's become an important tool for surviving the storm.
Facebook and Twitter are hands down the best to get a complicated message across.
We'll show you the new role Facebook, Twitter, and others are playing in surviving the storm.
It's been over 10 years since a hurricane has struck Florida, and when the next one hits, we know that social media will play a huge role in keeping you safe. The social media landscape is constantly evolving, so it's no surprise that this hurricane season, we have a new tool to use during storm coverage, Facebook Live.
Good morning. It's about 10 minutes after 2.
Yeah, well, Facebook Live is going to give journalists a huge opportunity to reach the public and actually answer the questions the public has.
Storm Team 8 has already used Facebook Live this winter during severe weather. During a hurricane, this feature will be crucial. We'll be able to reach those who have lost power as long as their phones are still operating. Another relatively new feature is the Facebook Safety Check.
If a hurricane was to hit Tampa Bay and Facebook activates the safety check, the next time you log on to Facebook, it will be front and center for you asking, "Are you okay?"
Family and friends from across the country can then check and see your status. This feature is only activated during severe events and was used recently during the terrorist attacks in Brussels. Leading up to this hurricane season, connect with trusted government sources and Storm Teammate so you can ensure you receive accurate information from social media. So, what's the best way to stay connected during severe weather?
As far as communicating information, Facebook and Twitter are hands down the best to get a complicated message across.
You can connect with all of us at Storm Teammate on our Facebook pages or on Twitter, Storm Teammate WFLA. I'm Storm Teammate meteorologist Julie Phillips.
Hello, I'm John Rogers in Venice. It's been more than a decade since a major storm hit the Tampa Bay area, and officials say that's a problem because people can become complacent and forget the seriousness of this time of year. Officials say you should never assume that you're safe because you don't want to be found unprepared when a storm eventually hits.
A hurricane is Mother Nature's fury, wreaking havoc on what man has built. And sometimes it can force us to flee for our lives.
We've just seen it on the TV, and it's pretty scary.
David Stevens is from England. He's never experienced a hurricane before, so he's playing it safe.
You never know. I think it's just good to be prepared.
He joined a packed house at Venice City Hall, learning about hurricane preparedness. Throughout storm season, it's vital to make sure your house is secure and you have your supplies handy before you need them.
When it's not hurricane season, I try to make sure things are stocked up at home.
Lifelong Florida resident Norma McHenry knows the threat too well. A devastating storm can catch you off guard.
I was here for Donna.
In 1960, Donna hit Florida as a Category 4, ravaging the state, then the American East Coast, killing 50 people.
It was unbelievable. It sucked all the water out of the Caloosahatchee River. You don't need to be afraid of them, but you certainly need to respect them.
That means know where to go, learn your evacuation routes, and look for a spot away from the wind and rising water.
If there's storm surge, you need to move away from where that is. Sometimes elevating upward is an option, but if you've been called to a mandatory evacuation, you need to get out of that evacuated area.
And stay informed.
Well, now I'm going to get one of these weather radios. That sound like a really good idea. We don't have one of those.
Better to be safe than sorry. So have a plan in place. Know whether or not you're in a flood zone. Know your evacuation routes and pack a hurricane kit. I have a small example of a hurricane kit right here to show you. Let me show you what we got in here. Officials say you should have flashlights and batteries. Also make sure you have a first aid kit. Cash comes really in handy, and very interesting, make sure you carry documentation with you. This could be power bills, it could be anything that actually has your address on it, because you'll need to prove to emergency officials you live at your address when you're trying to return to a storm-ravaged area. It never hurts to plan ahead. In Venice, John Rogers, News Channel 8.
Don't go away. There's still more to come on Surviving the Storm.
We want to thank you for watching tonight, and we also want to thank our friends at beautiful Egmont Key State Park and National Wildlife Refuge. If you come to Egmont, please leave it as you found it. Now, hurricane season begins June 1st and ends on November 30th. Now is the time to start making the plans for hurricane season 2016. Have a plan for surviving the storm. Good night.